Go to the second one, John, to tell us.
Be good.
There's a double one.
Looks like right there, isn't he?
A little bit of brooking, you know.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think I'm in it just Sundays now, they go during the week.
Yeah.
So we are.
Right.
We're gonna see.
Okay.
We'll call the meeting to order. Do we have any additions or changes to the agenda? Okay, so we'll go with that. Visitors to be heard. Okay. Visitors to be heard.
You get a motion.
Oh, sorry. Do we want to approve the agenda?
The motion approved the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Visitors to be heard. What do we do with, how many minutes? Or does it matter, just say their name if they want to talk? and-
Yeah, my guess is most folks are here speak on a specific item though, so
Yep.
I think it's fine if they have to speak at that time.
Oh, so we'll wait and,
Yeah,
okay,
I think that's acceptable.
okay. Does anyone, okay, so we'll wait, if you want to talk, you can, we'll wait until that topic. Approval of the minutes before, or last month's minutes. If anyone wants to look over those and then give a motion.
I motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Reports, recreation manager.
So fall soccer and flag football begins September 7th. We're at 72 for fall soccer, 79 for flag football. Summer recreation program, I think, went really well. I noted some future program possibilities that we had discussed a few months back. Just was checking if that was anywhere, something we wanted to add towards winter or next year at all, or hold off. Those were adult flag football, volleyball league, basketball league, summer wiffle ball, and cornhole league. And we don't need to decide that now if we have other things to discuss. And then concession stands, if we're gonna go ahead and advertise it to be outsourced.
I think outsourcing the concession stands a no-brainer. The resources involved and the money made is not.
When would we need to start? I mean, we were too late this year, that's why we didn't do it, right? So when would we need to start that
It will
process?
be over the winter. Right now, we don't have the final numbers, we're pretty close, obviously, but we won't know for sure what, the net gain looks like for pool and, baseball, softball concessions until the September finance report, after we close out August. It's not much, I can tell you that, it's not gonna be a whole lot on that gain, even less than last year. But I would say if the board wishes to move that direction, we'd want a recommendation sometime later this fall. We'd probably do it September, October, and get it out to bid sometime in December or January, which should give at least 4 months for whoever gets that bid to get everything in shape.
Okay. And something else, for possible future programs, I was thinking was maybe like even just an open gym every once in a while where people could go. I mean, it'd have to be a joint use with the school, but you could go play volleyball or basketball and it could be like a family, event. And we'd probably just need one supervisor, I would assume, at that point. But just something to think about, maybe. Okay. Anything else on that? Summer rec, how many did we end up with then, like, at each?
So there was 59 kids, but a lot did more than one. So it was about, I'd say a little over 100. But I think we had about 30 or 40 for outdoor week and sports week, and closer to 25 or 30 for the fine arts week.
Okay. And the 1 week at a time, do you think that went well?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Do you think it's something that we could grow? Where
I
we
think-
maybe add more weeks, maybe it's 2 athletic weeks and 2, and you do pickleball or whatever it is,
Mhm.
and then maybe something else.
And I think maybe kindergarten was getting a little young, and then 7th grade was getting a little old. So maybe 1st through 6th.
Okay,
Would it be something where if we got on it early enough next year that we could do maybe some in the spring and then some late summer after everything else is wrapped up? Or do you think spring is too crazy? Baseball, softball?
Maybe.
okay. And flag football, like, what does that look like for teams? I know like the older kids have, I think, just 3 teams and they're just gonna switch it up.
Yeah.
Mid-year is what it sounded like. What
Yeah.
what are the other?
The lowest one had 5 teams, I think, and then the middle one had 4, and then 3, or it was 4, 5, and 3. So, yeah.
Alright.
So that's something we could probably see, it would be more numbers next year with a, not last minute put out there, hey, let's do flag football.
And we had it out before T did,
Right,
but the
but they knew about the
The
T
Sioux
one.
Falls one starts,
Way
it
before.
opened so early.
When is it all open?
Must be like January.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, and if it's run well this year, that could help too. I mean, some people maybe held off because they didn't know what it was gonna be like, so.
How are the ages broken out?
First and second,
Okay.
or no, kindergarten and first, second and third, and then 4th, 5th, 6th.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? All right, thank you. Moving on to old business, Westerman Park Playground.
board members, this is just kind of a final run through here on the playground. You have in front of you a new proposal and quote, working with our selected vendor on this item. And she knows that if we went just a little bit higher, we'd get more of a grant, and the total price would only increase by like $1,000 or so bucks. So in your package, you'll see comparison there between, I can't remember the options, option something and option 5. Option 5 is the newest one. And what we focused on when we were talking about that's option 1 versus option 2, excuse me.
On this,
That's the one. Yep. So option 1, the total cost was 93 and change. Option 2, the total cost was 95 and change. We do plan on doing the EWF, that's the engineered wood fiber mulch. We plan on doing that in-house. So that will bring the price down. We think the total's probably still gonna be right around 90. It's a little more than we had hoped for earlier this year. I think we were shooting for 80, but another few $1,000s is really not a deal breaker here. So by going up to that next level, we really only added in cost, $1,500. And so when we talked about this first, I said, well, if we're going to be able to add new items and not increase the cost significantly, then we should really focus on that age 2 to 5 gap that we were talking about. And so that's what's been added here. So what's been added is a couple more of those 3-foot decks, so it's creating more of a linking bridge. A new point of entry with a spiral climber, an interactive flower spinner panel, and one more roof. That's what's been added.
Looks good.
That's a lot of extra stuff for just
Yeah.
a couple $1,000,
$1,500,
yeah.
I mean, it's gonna look really good there in that spot though, on the baseball field.
So we're still doing all the demolition, we're still doing the install and curb cut for the sidewalk. Well, we'll contract out the concrete, but that's separate from this. And then we'll have to do all the mulch and excavation and everything, so.
And are the swings, those kid swings, is that right here? That, the orange and black? Is that on the bottom of the map?
Are you talking about the saucer thing? That saucer swing?
No,
The
the ones,
existing
the
swings?
existing, I think they're orange
Yeah.
and black.
Oh,
So would they be,
they're,
I'm just trying to get a picture.
I don't
of
see a
what-
north arrow on this.
Yeah,
they are, if you look.
I think so, because
Here.
that diagonal one is on the northwest side.
This
oh yeah,
side.
okay, there's a big
So
one.
north would be to the right of that
Yeah.
document.
Okay,
So they're up kind of by that, the saucer swing.
okay. Okay,
Obviously, if you want to bring the price down a little bit, I would look at those add-ons that we had that were separate from the structure.
I think we stick with how it is now with 5. I think it looks great. It's a great investment in our community, so.
So
I think
if we
it
start
fills
to
that
take some
area.
of those additions off, then it kind of messes with the whole grant thing, right? Because it would be, we
It
have.
would, but to a lesser degree. The stuff we're adding is more expensive than the side items.
You want a motion to approve 5, or are we just gonna go with it?
Motion to recommend, yes.
All right, I'm gonna motion to recommend our recommendation of the Opt 5.
okay, got a motion and a second?
I second.
All right, all in favor?
Hi.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. On to new business. Letter A, tournament teams.
Is this where we had our input from our guests?
Yeah, I would imagine most of it's gonna come in here. So, board members, I've received a couple of concerns regarding rostering and playing on 2 of the tournament teams. So over the last couple of months, I've heard these concerns. And I may not have all the information here, but in one case, rostered players didn't have an opportunity to play during tournaments beyond a few outs or at-bats. In another, a coach had, contrary to how our program is operated, chosen to take a player from a separate team, which effectively benched another player on the existing team that was selected earlier. I would encourage additional discussion of possible responses to these. In one case, definitely a violation of the spirit, rule of the programs. The other, maybe the violation of the spirit. I think this is just something we need to clean up from a policy perspective, if need be. I'll once again say that tournament teams are not necessarily compatible with the mission of Lennox Parks and Rec program. A park board mission statement is included in the memo as a reminder. As a recreational program and not a competitive program, our role as local government is to provide opportunities for recreation. My take has always been that the parents wish to form competitive teams, in which they can ensure their children have an opportunity to compete at a higher level. That's their prerogative, but not necessarily our place to provide. Sermon over.
Off of what you said, it is and has been our policy, as long as I've been here, that if person's on the roster, that's the person that plays on the team. You don't pick somebody up and bench person on the roster. And on our rules that we came up 5 years ago, whatever it was.
Well, this is part of why we have, an independent group selecting who's on those teams,
Right.
so that we avoid these kinds of things
Right.
in the first place.
So, and what we did, because something like this happened before with softball, I believe, it was like a while ago, and that coach is suspended for 2 years
Mm.
for coaching. We can't coach any program associated with Park and Rec for 2 years. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But I could be.
Remember how far?
I don't think I was around.
It was like 5, 6 years. It was when I first started getting on. It was that when the softball blew up and people were pulling players and making teams and stealing players and. That might even be for you. I think that was for you.
It had to be.
Yeah, I think it was for you. That was for you.
I don't remember any of that.
Oh yeah, it was messy.
Did it happen during the season or, like, okay, in the middle of a season, not at the beginning, someone new moving in?
On the 10U team, I'll break them up by teams. The 10U team was the one that we got some concerns about, let's just call it playing time. I think that was throughout the season. The 12U team, that's the team where a player was taken from another tournament team and brought on. That was at the final tournament, the state tournament.
Matt Hanson.
Come on up.
Matt Hanson. On the 12U team, it was more than just at the state tournament. It happened in Mitchell as well when the
Okay.
boys played. The selected player was brought up. He played every inning of every game, and other kids sat on the bench while they went through the tryout process and were selected.
For that
while
team.
this other kid played over top of him.
Right.
So
Thank you. So my guess is, and Matt, maybe you know better than I do, 3 or 4 tournaments?
two for sure.
Okay.
So the Mitchell tournament and the state tournament.
I mean, for the whole season, was that 4 tournaments they played?
The boys played in 5.
Okay.
So 2 out of 5.
And for state, it didn't look like, and maybe I read it wrong, he didn't play as many innings in state, am I correct?
He played first game and he was slotted to play over other players in the
Yep.
other game.
Yep, and
And that was changed. So.
okay.
Anything else?
Thank you for your.
And could I just verify that no one, the Mitchell tournament, it sounded like some people were gone and maybe that's why he was pulled up.
So he was asked to
But-
play because there was people that were gone,
But
yes.
then the state tournament,
However, and my son was one of them, but I'm okay with character building, that's fine. My son sat on the bench, while the other kid played. And, for me, it's okay that, we have to learn, that's fine at this age, but at the same time, we showed up, we worked really hard, we did our best at this tryout, and we deserve the reward as well. So as a parent, to sit down and explain that to him is challenging.
I agree.
I think we might have to clarify in the rules if it doesn't say so, but if you did bring in a pickup player, that would be for emergency situations to fill in.
We've got
That
language
was
in
what I
there that,
had told them.
Yes, and that's what the intent of what we came up with a long time ago was, if you have a pickup player, they do not supersede. They're there in case somebody gets hurt, a pinch run or something like that, then you can use them for that, but not as a.
So
Was
maybe
the
there's-
player, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you said maybe there's some language we needed to clean up.
Right.
in
I think-
policy, so.
if we don't have,
It wasn't discussed with me either.
no.
I was gonna say, what,
I think, I'm just gonna say it point blank, guys. The coach knew what he was doing. He knew it wasn't supposed to happen, and it happened.
Right.
So is there a policy for how that situation should be handled?
No.
not right now, right?
In terms of,
Violating the rules of the
Discipline?
existing policy?
no. We have a coach discipline process, but, and in this case, I don't think this parent has any more involvement in the program after this age, so.
Is it safe to assume this really hasn't happened before, so we haven't had to? I mean.
The last time I remember was
well,
softball.
Yeah,
Wait,
I'm
but
sorry,
that was a long
but
time.
a long time ago.
But since then, I haven't heard anything that I've come across.
I maybe suggest checking with Jason. see if he remembers anything from back, but.
So at a minimum, we need to clean up the policy verbiage
Right.
on how to handle this, if
Well-
there's issues going forward, if we're gonna continue to train teams.
Maybe new, is there a set of guidelines with this, I mean, as far as coaches, and I don't even know, like, do they have something kind of in place that kind of directs some of this stuff, or is it just kind of, I didn't know if they had anything, would have looked for that?
So I looked at the West Central Baseball Association stuff, and pretty much, if you're bringing up a player from another team, so I think they've got it tiered, maybe top 2, and then after that, it's maybe rec. But if you're bringing up a player, it's always gotta get approved by the Parks and Rec director or something like that. And it's always based on someone else is missing, and it's not gonna hurt, it's not gonna affect the other team. So we steal from this team, and now this team doesn't have enough. Now it's not allowed. But this team can steal to get here, now this team can take another one, or has enough to get by. Like, I think it's probably on a as-needed basis, but I'm guessing it doesn't happen all that often, honestly.
Yeah. I was thinking for moving forward, if there's anything, you know, kind of some guidelines or direction on some of those things, or if there is, I haven't looked on the website or anything, I wouldn't know.
Do we go over anything on the coaches meeting?
Do we have coaches
I don't know
meetings?
that we
We
had
had
one.
Yes.
I think there should be rules meetings for sure, 'cause otherwise we're all part
I
of
thought
our pants.
we got a coach's expectation thing.
I know I talked to the coaches about borrowing from other teams, and it was if they absolutely needed it, and they would discuss that with the coach of the other team,
I thought that's what the extra players was for.
and talk to me.
I thought that's what the extra players off of the second team was for though, specifically the 12U.
Yeah,
Because there was 2 teams, and then there was leftovers that necessarily didn't make one of those 2 teams. I thought those are who those 2 teams could choose from. Not pull from the other team based on what we got for information from them.
and it was to have it okayed by the other coach.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that was discussed.
did that other team play in the state tournament?
We did not.
Okay.
So we do have, on the Park and Rec website, we do have our Park and Rec policies. I'm not gonna go through all 13 chapters of this, but I know we talk in programs, chapter 7, about team selection, and that being at the discretion of the selectors. That's not anybody else that's making that decision, it's nobody with the Park and Rec program, it's no coaches, it's no parents, it's an outside 3 parties that do that for us.
Nate, can I make a comment on that?
Yeah, come on up.
With that moving forward, can we make sure that there is continuity in it? And not on Trey or anybody else, but there were kids that threw for a radar gun, that didn't throw for a radar gun. There were kids that didn't get the same shake as everybody else did, maybe the day before, the day after.
Standard checks. kind of
Yes,
thing.
so if USF's gonna do it, USF needs to send the same 6 kids down that are throwing pitches, hitting fly balls, doing all that stuff, and they're rating everybody, because, my son wasn't affected by it, but he was in tears on the way home because one of his buddies, he knew, didn't get the same shape that he got. So, it's not fair to the kids, especially if we're gonna take it outside of the community. These people don't know us, that's fine, but at the same time, though, it needs to be standardized across the board for everybody.
So
Would
in
you
tournament
say,
team selection, tournament or trial will be held each year. Selection of players will be made by a group of 3 volunteers with no family members in the tryouts, chosen by the park board. Volunteers notify Park and Rec manager of the final team selection. Manager notifies parents and players. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, so we'll just make sure that when we do it for next year, that it's the same, whoever is gonna come do it, that they're available to do it for multiple days, and so for continuity, because that makes sense, because different people see different things, so.
It was the same people.
Oh, okay.
Just
didn't
not
do all the
using-
same exact thing.
Oh,
This is
okay.
like they follow the same procedures.
Because they did like a Wednesday and a Saturday or something.
Yeah.
So on Saturday it was different.
Same kids, just, they didn't maybe do exactly the same, the radar gun or whatever.
And I think there was some soft toss versus tee, and there was some pitching that was or wasn't as elaborate as
Right.
other kids. So, and the worst part is that they talk, and they communicate, so they know,
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
they're not dumb. What were you gonna ask?
I was gonna say, is that something that's happened this year only, or is that, have you heard of that other years too?
I guess not, I haven't, not for my kids, right, it's always been closed, right, so, but it was brought up this year, by my son, so.
And have we had USF, I mean, not that, but we had USF this year, was it last year too? And the year before was maybe coast to coast?
No.
Or it's just always at coast to coast?
It's been at
Yes.
coast to coast, but it's always been USF players since I've been around.
I think DSU did it my
Yes.
first year.
DSU,
3
yeah.
years
They
ago.
did
But,
first one.
okay.
Before me then.
Yeah.
It used to be outdoors though, it'd be nice to get it back outdoors.
It's hard to do that when it's,
I would say,
when you don't
first
know
and
what the
foremost,
weather's
try to do it outside, and if it's not, we'd have a backup, in my opinion.
It was 80 degrees the day we did it this year.
Yeah, true.
And honestly, prior to it, it wasn't as early in the year. Like, it was the second or it was third or fourth week in April. It wasn't the first week in April.
Is that enough time?
Well, I mean, for my kids who wrestle, we get done wrestling at the end of March, and then we turn around and start working on
It's
baseball
not
as soon
enough
as soon as we
time.
can.
It was, I mean,
I was always
my
told
kid
to do it
wrestles too.
sooner.
Yeah.
That was the input I got.
I think you can plan for it sooner, but we still have 2 more, we can go to the middle of April if we have to get that tryout done. If we can find a day outdoors that works. 'Cause I think 45 minutes indoors just, it's not enough. I mean,
It's not the
if
same.
you're giving kids 5 pitches, 5 swings, throwing fly balls and the ceiling's 10 foot high. I mean, they've got the team close most of the years, but, this year was really competitive for 12U, and some kids missed out, and some got in. Who knows, if the play's outside, they make that play. If it's inside, it hits the ceiling, I would like to see it outdoors. That's what I want.
It makes sense.
I like that idea.
And a little
With
longer.
a backup
I don't
as an
think
option.
45 minutes is quite long enough when there's, I don't know how many kids, 10 to 15.
I would say Saturday got very crazy with the amount of kids that were on those days compared to Wednesday. There was about a quarter of the kids on Wednesday that there were on Saturday. In just my opinion.
I think we just plan at least 2 weekends, and if it works, it works. If we have to go indoors, we can go inside, but I'd rather see it outside.
So what if on one weekend it works to go outdoors, another weekend it doesn't? Now we don't have the same situation for everyone.
I think you just plan that, if you do it on Saturday, you kind of plan it 9 to 3 or something, try and get it all done in one day,
It might be difficult though, if we know on Thursday that the weather's looking really bad for Saturday, to find an indoor spot that would be,
But I think you
Would
give
work.
it a call, you start that first weekend in April, if it's bad, we got Saturday, Sunday the next, something like that. I just don't think the indoor tryout is fair to everyone.
But as a parent, if it's April 2nd, but actually I need to have the next 3 weekends available in case it goes until April 16th or something. That's not fair to,
Or even the people picking who's on the team.
They're hard.
You would have to sequester them for 3 weeks? That's not gonna happen.
not that I don't disagree with what you're saying, it's just, it's difficult in that regard too, though.
I think that's the easiest way to get around all of it is early communication. This is the day we're doing it outdoors, this is the makeup day if you can't make it. No matter what, people are gonna have conflicts. So the earlier you get it out, the better they can plan around it, the better they can be prepared.
You have to plan for the majority and let the minority figure out what they gotta do. And that's, if you miss it, you miss it. Life's life.
But if a kid misses it on the 3rd week, it was possible, but he was available for 2 other weeks,
If
that's not,
if we have the tryouts and it's this day, whoever doesn't make it, then you give them a week's time, and then that third week, this is the trial. If you can't make it then, it is what it is. You can't hold up the world for one kid. You can't.
I think
doesn't work.
what he was saying is host everybody on one day.
Yes, sorry.
Just
Okay.
everybody on one day,
Gotcha.
and then here's everybody
Right.
for the makeup day.
Right.
And if you can't make those two,
Yeah.
you know, we're not,
Yeah.
that's what he was going
Okay,
with.
I get that, yes.
Not multiple, like
Right.
you sign up for this day or this day, this is the trial day for everybody who wants to try out.
Yeah.
You can't make this day or this day's rain now.
Okay.
We would move it to this day.
I think they added it
Yeah,
last,
what he said, what I said.
last year, right? They added a second day because it was kids that couldn't make it, multiple kids where they had to have a second, is that right, Trey?
Yep.
They added a second day last year, where before that always was just one day. I think the only issue might be is like if you had just one day and it's bad weather, then what do you do?
And now you go indoors with all those
But if it's
35
one day,
kids.
but if it's one day, you can then adjust. If you have everybody on one day, and that Saturday's gonna be bad,
Yeah.
then you just move it to the next Saturday. You know, you just say, is this possible?
Yeah.
Or have one set out 2 Saturdays away, so you give people time to work.
Yeah, I think that's why they added the second though, so let's say like the second day, you have to move everybody to second, people are on a family vacation or something. And then you have a couple kids, that would be the only trouble you'd run into, I believe, you know, if you had.
But like,
Yeah.
get it out,
Get to one.
get it out early enough.
Right.
If you get it out in
That's true.
February,
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a ton of people gonna, plan a
Yeah.
trip for 3 months down the road or 2 months down the road.
Yeah, earlier the better, that would help.
Right. And I think if a coach during the season violates the policy, the coach should be suspended for the rest of the year. Willfully violates the policy. Not like makes a mistake.
At state
So,
tournament.
but this happened during the season though, during Mitchell. Yeah, if it happens during the state tournament, then they're done for the next year. I mean, and I think it's current year and the next year. 'Cause I mean, you just can't, you have to follow the will of the policy, the rules of the policy, the spirit of the program.
So who takes over then?
There's assistant coaches. So and if there's not somebody, there will be somebody. Nobody is gonna let a team not be coached in Lennox, period. It's not gonna happen.
Brock Robston, you coach for Summer League, and we had 2 other coaches with me as well. We had a couple parent issues. I'm gonna make this really quick and really simple. That an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you've heard that, Mr. Benjamin Franklin. And one thing, we live in a culture now, it doesn't matter what sport it is, you can't have bench players. Can't. You're gonna have parent issues. I've coached for 25 years. I've refereed for 25 years. I've got really thick skin. Okay? But you can't have bench players. Parents are out of their minds. So they're going to come after you if you're playing that. It doesn't matter. You can't be part of the team. At first it's, oh yes, we want to be part of the team. When I was growing up, back in my day, if you made the team, that was great. It even happened in the Olympics. If you watch the Olympics, they got 12 guys, they're making millions of dollars. Some guys are sitting on the bench and now they're pouting. Okay? So here's my suggestion in terms of a recommendation for a policy. Your tournament team, you guys can weigh in on this, should only have a max of 11 kids. That's what I think. I've talked to coaches, 13's ridiculous. Okay? And you have a couple reserve. That should be a policy you put in. Okay? Because playing 11 versus trying to play 13 is a big difference. Okay? So I think that's one recommendation. Hey, you want to take the recommendation? Great. If you don't, that's fine. That's your recommendation. Second thing is, I've dealt with parents in 25 years of coaching on a lot of different issues. But the number one issue is playing time. That's the number one issue. Okay? Well, we can prevent that too. Okay? We can prevent that too. You need to, I think, another recommendation of that, because the temperature of the room gets hot. Emotions get hot. Emotions run high. I had a little bopper mom about that high 20 years ago back me up into a locker after a game. And I'm like, hey, I'm just going to take it because emotions run high. Well, 2 days later, she's in my face apologizing. Like, what was I thinking? But I understand. I get it. And my kids are going to be in a situation where probably life's going to be unfair. And that's how we're going to deal with it. We're not going to attack somebody verbally or via a text, especially during a game, which happens, okay? And so I think there are things you can put into place to say, hey, maybe there should be a 24 to 36 hour cooling off period. Maybe. Maybe that's something to do. If it happens at the end of a year, Okay, and I do not, and I will not, to the best of my ability, ever take this out on a kid. If I don't like a mom, or I don't like a dad, or their buggers, it is not the kid's fault. Do not want to do that. Would never look to suspend a kid based on a parent's actions. Terrible idea, okay? But sometimes, if this happens at the end of a year, can you hold coaches to accountable? You want us to be accountable. You don't want us to berate? Absolutely. You don't want us to yell and scream and bark? Absolutely. We can't be physical with a kid? Absolutely. You have that in your policy. Fantastic. What's the standard then for the parents? Because they should be held to some account, and you guys might not be able to do anything about it. I don't know. I'm asking that, okay? And I think if you have a cooling off period, things kind of settle in, because I can have an adult conversation with an adult about a kid's playing time or whatever, that's fine. Okay, but you're not going to yell and scream and bark like 10, 12 hours at me, or you're not going to send texts in the middle of the night. Like, come on. Like, respect the coaches. We're volunteer coaches. I think that's something that's wise to kind of put in there. And again, I think if you go to 11, a lot of these conversations we're having, we're probably not having. I really do. But hey, life's three lemons. We're going to make lemonade here. So that's something to take into consideration for the future. There's going to be another summer. There's going to be coaches. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about, well, should the city run that? Should they not? I don't know. But I think there should be some things in place that protect the coaches from folks that, again, the temperature runs hot. And there just needs to be a cooling down of that. And if the accountability piece comes to where, okay, that's the standard and a parent loses his marbles, well, he or she shouldn't be able to come to the next tournament then. If there's a next tournament, well, what if there's not? There's not a whole lot you can do if the kid now doesn't come back the next time because he's graduating, or the parent leaves with that. And I don't want to punish the kid, but maybe that's going to be the penalty then. The kid's suspended because the parent can't behave themselves because they get too riled up. So, that's just something that happened with our year. 2 years ago, we go 1-11 and get flatly and just embarrassed. This year, we have a pretty good year and all the fun's taken out because the parents are mad. So just something that you should consider. Thanks.
And I'm pretty sure
I have a question
we
for
have.
Brock. How many players did you have on your team this year?
13.
13, okay.
We have a parent policy in there. A pretty toothy one, if I'm not mistaken. So if there are issues, they need to be brought.
We have a policy, yes.
Oh, I thought it was because we had issues before, but maybe it didn't get as toothy as I thought we did.
And
It
just
did
for
not. So basically, failure to abide by the code of ethics is what we've got. You've got a first violation warning, second violation suspension for 1 full season, third is permanent dismissal. Certain violations may constitute immediate dismissal from all programs, so on and so forth. So.
And for me personally, it's water under the bridge, but it's going to happen all the time.
Oh, yeah, it happens.
In every sport, no matter what sport it is. But again, if you could prevent some of it, then I think you should think about implementing it.
But a reply to that would be, you had 13 kids, but you had 10 play 5+ innings, and you had 3 kids share maybe 1 inning a game. Of course, you're going to have a little bit of team breaking away. You want to talk about taking the fun out of it, that takes the fun out of it. We've got unbiased judges that are picking 13 kids. They chose that number, and we had a coaching staff that chose that 10 were good enough, and the other 3 didn't get a chance. The only at-bats they ever got were possibly a pinch hit, and sometimes they got to play in the field. One player got to play in the field for 3 outs. So I understand what you're saying, but when faced with that, of course parents are going to be upset at that.
Yeah, and I think you can, if you want to, you can put in a policy about playing time if you want. Like some teams roster bat, some tournaments make you roster bat. Roster batting 13 versus roster batting 11 is a big deal. Would you coaches agree with that, or?
Yeah, are we talking about tournament team or?
Tournament team.
So, do we have a policy on playing time for a tournament team?
Not right now necessarily, because it's never really been a factor. Because what would you guys say for the current 12U kids? How many games have you guys roster batted in your last 3 seasons? What percent? I know, but 10U, you also had kids, right, playing, so when they were 9, when they were 10, and when they were 11, how many roster batting opportunities did every kid have?
How many times did we roster back?
Yeah,
As many as we could.
so
So
was it 80% probably?
I don't know, it's hard to say. They'd probably be close.
Yeah,
But I can tell you at state we didn't.
no, and
Yeah, we're
I get that.
Yeah, we're playing.
But he didn't get a choice on how many kids he got for 10U. That's how many kids tried out. We didn't cut any kids in 10U, correct?
They were
We did.
16 or 17, the rest of them were on there, some of them. So they put everybody on the list, 11 or 13 kids, and like 4 subs. And I guess when I got the roster, I'm like, in my mind, that's not gonna be great for the coaches or for anybody else. And I don't know why there was 13. If it's, well, we got these 3 kids, then bring them back and figure it out. That's why you hired outside full help to do it. You know, and again, did you guys, when you roster batted, what'd you roster bat? You have 11 kids? I mean, that's a different game than 13.
that's different, but the number 2 team for 10U roster batted their whole year. The number 1 team roster batted, they had 12, Vermillion had 13. They roster batted the whole year with 13. There weren't any complaint or any excuses, and I'm not saying 13 isn't too much, but that was you came into that knowing there were 13. You guys chose to coach. If you didn't want to coach with 13, you could have passed it up probably.
Yeah, but those other teams or those other communities might say you have to roster bat. Just because a community roster bats, that doesn't mean I have to roster bat.
I think it comes down to, what are you guys backing, is this a competitive team or is this another rec team?
Well,
If it's a
it can
competitive
be
team,
competitive
if we are a
and-
competitive team, then you have to allow some choices to be made by coaches.
The only problem is,
Because a tryout gives you 45 minutes with a kid. These tryout evaluators have 45 minutes to evaluate a kid. He might have a bad day, okay? And I know that kid should be on a tournament team, and now he's not. I'm not saying go out, pick up other players, but these coaches spend the entire season watching these practices, so when it comes to a competitive environment like state, the coaches are gonna put the team in the best position to compete. So are we talking competitive or are we talking rec?
the
But
only
that's
problem,
different than a May 15th tournament where we haven't even played a game with all these
Is it still a
kids.
competitive team? Is there still?
The only-
We were in
but
the
the-
rec division.
the only problem is this is a city-sponsored team.
Correct.
And our city mission is not to put people on the bench
That's
because
what
the
your
coach
decision has to be. Is it
That, but
still-
that's in our mission statement. That's what it is. So, it isn't it's for everybody to play. If you want to play on a team where you bench people and you play certain people, then do what like softball does and go make your own traveling team, buy your own jerseys, get your own practice times, then you can do whatever you want. But if you're gonna use
But there's no other
Lennox,
place to put that on a competitive tryout.
but it's,
So
they
it's up to the
think,
coach's discretion, correct?
there's no city girls traveling team.
Well, correct,
Right.
but when we're talking competitive tournament team.
Right, if you're gonna have a non-city sponsored tournament team, you can do whatever you want. City sponsored, you can't because you have to follow the city rules.
Does the city rules say you have to roster bat every tournament?
No, but it says
No.
you have
We're
to
not
follow the
saying
spirit. The spirit of, it's every kid gets a chance to play is what we do.
But every kid gets a chance to play is subjective. I'd rather say they gotta play at least an inning, they gotta bat at least one time. Like, put that in your
Right,
mouth.
all right, that's,
Everybody
I agree,
do that.
I agree. It's
But
not a
here's
six
what-
nothing.
It hasn't come up until this year probably. And that's probably why there wasn't a policy, because it worked just fine. So there might be a policy in place at this point, like you're stating.
Right,
But the point is, it hasn't happened until this year.
but I don't think typically your tournament teams have 13 kids.
I don't think I've never seen a travel.
There's not a lot.
Two kids.
It's usually coach's discretion, 11 or 12.
Yeah.
So we're saying the tournament team, no matter what, is still a rec team?
No.
Are we playing to win or are we playing to play everyone?
We can't play to win if you're
You can play-
being sponsored by the city as we have it now. Things can be changed, but the spirit of what we came up with is if somebody moves to town and doesn't know anybody here, any of the coaches, and that person wants to go play the sport, that's a very nervous kid coming up and just takes everything and looks horrible. Coaches already get an impression of the kid, they're not very good. It might be a very good child that's not going to be able to play ball now because he just got pushed to the side because he isn't of the group that came in. That's what we have to look at.
We have the rec league, isn't that what that's for? And then the
But
tryout teams.
what happens if this kid is not a rec league kid? This kid is a really good player, but doesn't get the opportunity to do that.
You can't play on the travel team unless you're on the rec team. Not per your guys' rules.
Right.
You cannot be on the travel team unless you're on one of the rec teams.
But we're talking about the travel team.
I'm just saying, if you try out for the traveling team, you're expecting to play competitive baseball.
And we can put them in. I'm just saying, as it is right now, it's not in there. I'm not saying we can't add something to that. I know we've discussed this last 3 years of completely eliminating travel team, anything from the city, and letting an association do it. We've been talking about that for a while, because this always happens.
And you
And
can.
it's on the baseball side most of the time. It happens.
You can be competitive and also, if you've got this group, maybe 13 is too much, I can concede that, that's fine. But you can still be competitive and get everybody involved. If they made that team, they should be involved in some way. Do they need to play the same amount as everybody else? No, but they
You would
can
just
have
like to see
chances.
more involved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a time and a place where a kid can get 3 outs on defense and get a chance out there, and they can get an at-bat in a game. Like, I don't think that's hurting the competitive spirit of the game. Every other team that we play almost does the same thing. The championship game that you guys played, Del Rapids, roster batted all 12 kids. I mean, so, and here's what I'll say, I'd rather be Del Rapid, I'd rather, be a peer with a team like Del Rapids, with a team like Vermillion, like those are the good baseball towns. Look, I would emulate what they're doing.
Lennox is a good baseball town.
I know, I'm not saying we aren't,
State
but
2 years in a row, so.
I'm not saying we aren't. I've never said that we aren't.
I know, but you just said Vermillion, whoever. but you
Yeah,
didn't
let's
say
stay
us.
with them, I'm saying.
I will say Del Rapids has changed their whole thing to where there's 5 and 6-year-olds now not being allowed to play because they didn't make the team. So I don't know that. we
Okay,
definitely
so maybe
wanna-
not then.
I don't know that we definitely want to follow their suit, but they start very young of weeding players out in their eyes.
Like, West Central is a pretty good baseball town. From what I can tell, they've got their rec stuff, they've got tournament teams, multiple teams get to go, to the tournaments and stuff.
I'm gonna throw a proposal or a thought out there. What if you limited to 10 players? And then allow the coach that one wild card pick? Because there are gonna be kids that have a bad day, or, you know what, maybe they were at a funeral, maybe they couldn't get to tryouts, but we know that's a good kid. We've been dealing with that kid for 4 years now, we've seen him come up through 8U, 10U, into 12U, wherever. He had a bad day, but we know we want that kid on our best team. We give the coach that one wild card spot, limited to 10, and now if that coach wants 12 or 13, he can choose to do that, but you're going to start pushing out good coaches if we don't protect them a little bit. If we don't allow them to coach, you're going to push out good coaches, is my concern. Because coaches, again, my understanding, and I may have been wrong because I didn't read all the bylaws, because I didn't get them as a parent, maybe we were supposed to get them as a parent signing up, but the travel team we're there to win. We're there to compete at the highest level we can compete at. My son was not in the top 24 the year before. I would make an argument he was not the 24th best player in tryouts, but it turned out to be probably the best thing that happened to him of not making that second team. We went and found another opportunity and he got a lot better. Wasn't the end of the world. It was humbling for him. My wife was PO'd. I didn't care because I've been in athletics long enough to know that special things can happen with kids in those roles. And when kids learn that it's okay to buy into that role, it can be just as important to that kid as hitting leadoff and playing shortstop. You know, and that's what I think parents miss in today's society. And I think that's where we need to support our coaches to allow them to coach these kids the way they see fit. And maybe that kid needs to be humbled. Maybe he needs to get to work a little bit more. Or maybe he just needs to deal with a little adversity. And yeah, that sometimes life isn't always fair. And that's part of athletics, and that's the biggest part of athletics that we miss in today's society, because we want it to be fair for everybody. We want it to be equal for everybody. And that's not the real world. And again, I'm getting onto my soapbox here, so I'll shut up and get off. But I would say if you can allow that coach to pick one kid, great. Or maybe he wants to just go with 10. And if he does, great. And then there's alternates. I would also say you maybe want to allow your alternates to practice with that travel team if they want to. You know, this is 2 years ago. I was a little frustrated that Mason couldn't even go practice when he was an alternate. Well, if we're trying to develop these kids and go by that mission, geez, let them go practice, if nothing else. But that would be my biggest thing is you need to support your coaches if you want good coaches. Because otherwise you're going to end up with a parent that doesn't care, and then you're going to lose all these kids are going to go to Sioux Falls and play competitive. If all travel is glorified rec, and there's no differentiation, you're going to lose them all to these travel teams that outside of Lennox. And you lose that identity as Lennox then.
I like your point with having a coach pick, like a coach says, hey, to the park and rec manager, I know this kid, he didn't get picked up, I would like to petition, free agent list, pull him off on that. I think that's a great idea. Because you guys see the people more than anybody else. You guys know the kids more than for the most part, more than the people watching. So if you know there's somebody that really should be, I think that's a really good idea. I really do. So I think that's very something value to put in there. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's really good.
Go ahead.
I think if you choose to not make competitive baseball and you move it away from park and rec and you make it to where the kids have to go on their own, I think you will ruin the program that's here. Yeah. I'm just going to throw it out right now. And it will ruin this program because kids will not be as successful. I'm going to tell you, take the top end out and you make a travel team outside of park and rec, and you will ruin the baseball because they're not going to win as much. I'm going to tell you right now. Those kids then get discouraged, and then you have kids quit, and your program just shrinks, in my opinion. It will ruin baseball.
I think the thought process there has been if someone would take it over, like a Lennox Baseball Softball Association, because that's what like West Central does, that's what Del Rapids does, that's what, their programs are ran by their baseball associations.
And we have
They're
baseball.
turned
We have
yeah,
right.
I don't know.
It went to
They're here.
And they're back. The baseball would defunct. Now we have baseball, softball.
Yeah.
So that would be when we would give that up, I think. In the meantime, I think that's why we would like to at least keep it so that it doesn't do what you're saying.
And I talked to a couple coaches in Madison, and their travel team, or their tournament teams have nothing to do with the city, it's all
Right.
this association. But they have a rec league with like West Central and some other teams also.
And I get what you guys are saying. Trust me, kids need to be humbled sometimes because they're not as good as they think they are. Or parents have their kids' glasses on and they think their kid's the best kid. I'm not saying any of that is not true. And I'm not saying that you're not playing the best people. I'm just saying from our point of view, from somebody coming to the city of Lennox, it's different. So what you're saying, I totally agree. If you've got 10 people and you're the coach, you're with them all season, and those 10 are the best, and you're playing those 10, you're cohesive, you're clicking, I get it. So I'm just speaking from the side of the city of Lennox instead of like, because that's, I'm with you on that. I totally agree with that. So if we're gonna make it where it's competitive, I don't know, we'll have to discuss if we can. I don't know. We'll have to figure, you know what, to ask if we can do that, and we're not gonna get caught between a parent then coming saying to us as the city of Lennox saying, hey, I don't like what you're doing, and then we're embroiled in some big old.
I think you may have to make competitive rules and
Right.
rec rules then.
So,
You have to differentiate between the two and make specific rules for that traveling team, whether it's 10, whether it's 11, whether it's one extra player, coach's discretion. I think you have to differentiate between the two. Because I don't think competition, if you make the travel team, you should be able to, as a player or a coach, you should be able to determine who's the best for that team.
Right.
In general.
You should.
And you should be able to not have to worry about parents saying, well, my kid only got one inning. It's competitive.
Right.
We don't always get what we want.
Yeah.
That's what the rec league is for, and that's why we.
And I think-
be rec.
I think there are certain people that would have been just fine with one inning, like, when we're not even getting one inning, and I'm not trying to harp on it, but these kids aren't even getting one inning in a game, are we giving chances to these kids? When it's 9-0 in a game, you can't put in a couple kids and give them some chances there. Like, there's opportunities there. Even if we see this big divide between number 10 to 11, 12, 13, they're still on the team and they can still get an opportunity, I think. And we can still be competitive. I don't know that any type of roster batting that would have been done this season would have affected the win-loss column or the competitiveness of the team.
I would disagree with that.
I would disagree with that as well. Batting 13 is much different
Yeah,
than batting 10 or 11.
I wouldn't wanna do roster batting. I batted 16 people, and they batted once, maybe twice this year. It's a big deal. So, roster batting is not effective. Having a manageable roster is effective, in my opinion. You can't run that many people through, and you got a leadoff batter for a reason. You want to be able to get them on base. So I get that. I really like the idea. If you have alternates, should be practicing with the team too. They should be part of the team that they're an alternate for. So that was another one you brought. There's no reason why. Because if you're going to pull up an alternate and they haven't practiced with the team, that makes zero sense.
Can I say something? Okay. I know you guys were discussing earlier about alternates or bringing kids up or having whatnot, and has this ever happened before? It's like, no, this is the first time it's happened. We've had 3 boys through the program, all through it. And I will tell you, 2 years ago for 12U, there was a roster of 12 kids and 3 alternates. The coach decided at that time that all 3 alternates could go along to every tournament, and those alternates played over the 13 that made the tournament team, and there wasn't squabble because we all knew that they were good enough to be there and whatnot. So it has happened, and there's never been a black and white of this is not allowed, or you can do this or you can't do that. So when people say the coach knew what he was doing and he knew exactly he shouldn't be doing this, it has happened for many years, and our kids have been on both sides of it. So I take that as a very big insult. Coming from a place of having kids through the program, it has happened. Alternates, all 3-4 alternates came with to the tournaments. We're having 15, 16 kids on the team. They're playing over the kids that made it. Right, wrong, indifferent. It does happen, and it has happened 2 years ago. And I still have the email of the kids that were on the team that made it with the alternates, if anybody wants to look at it. But it's never been, you cannot do this.
See, and that's like what Brock said, is to have something in place.
Right.
Prevention,
And I also want to say, when kids are gone for a tournament and other players come on, they may play over kids who made the team because they don't play certain positions. Or if the coaches, where you guys say, give the coaches a little grace, like they know what they're doing most of the time. I get, we're all human, we all make mistakes. But if they don't feel like a certain kid is as good as playing one position over another, then you can't always play, well, these 10 made the team, so these alternates, I mean, that takes away from, I mean, why have the coaches there then if it's gonna be ran by the city of, these are the 10 kids, these need to play, the alternates, I mean, it gets hard, and I get that, and I don't think you're ever gonna make parents happy, no matter what you decide to do. But when this whole thing of, like, this coach knows exactly what he did, this has happened for years, I can promise you.
So I was the coach, so I heard my name was getting thrown under the bus. So what was the problem?
No, it was brought up that somebody from another team was picked up and played over players from the team that was selected.
Yeah, because we had players gone that were gonna make the tournaments. So it said right in there, we had 2 teams, it's always been, I've been used to 1 team. So we had alternates, 1 team and then alternates. Now it was 2 teams and then alternates. So the alternates were the players that didn't make the second team. So we made a decision that we were gonna be able to pick up players from the second team if we needed more players, versus picking up those bottom kids, our alternates on the second team, which wouldn't even make sense.
So if I'm not mistaken, in order to do that though, it had to been run through the park and rec manager. Coaches just
We were
can't
never
decide.
told that.
Not that I was.
So
I don't know that anything's in the policy right now.
Well, I think I said, talk to the other coach, ask him if he's available. Right. And that's what we discussed, yeah.
So and that's another thing is it just has to be, we have to have something down so people know.
Yeah.
So,
And as far as playing time, every tournament, every player batted every single time except the state tournament, the last 3 games. So I've seen a 10U game this year that kids didn't even bat. So people are complaining, I've seen it with my own eyes. I batted everybody, not saying they got in the field, they're playing. I mean, what else can I do?
well, I appreciate you
Thank you.
speaking because that clarified
Right.
some things, so
I
I
just
thank you.
don't like people stabbing me in the back when I don't have a say.
And to me, I think all we need, if we have an actual policy in place, then people will know what is actually allowed, what isn't.
Right.
And I think that's what we're talking about, so.
I think one of the biggest things to clear some of that up is the 11 players is probably ideal moving forward. And I think the recommendation of splitting up the rec and I think that would kill the rec program. Like the main coaches are these tournament team coaches, they're the ones that put in the most time, they have the most experience. Without them, you can't even find coaches for teams or with experience to coach. So I think it's worked, my boys played in it every year, I think it's worked really well to have it work together. I think maybe some guidelines or something, if something wasn't clear, clears a lot up ahead of time on a coaches meeting if there wasn't one, but I think it's ideal to have them together and it runs pretty well actually for the most part, so. And those are the guys that have the experience and the knowledge and to teach baseball and to keep kids in it that maybe don't have the skill level yet, but I know coaches have said in the past, like, you don't know if a kid at 9, 10, or 11 is gonna turn into a great player when he's in high school. You don't know that, so you can't write him off, even if he just makes a rec team at that point. So I think it's important to keep them that way together. I think it's run pretty well for the most part, like I said, so.
I would say whatever your policy is, support your coaches.
Right.
Because I'm gonna tell you, these guys, number one, they're volunteers. Number two, when I've got the text messages before, okay, and I tell you story after story, but it does impact you as a human being. It does impact you at work. It does impact your family. It does impact your marriage. It does add extra stress to your life when you're having to deal with that crap. It just sucks, I'm telling you. It's like, here I am busting my butt because, like I said, I'm not coaching football this year, and I didn't coach baseball this year on purpose because I wanted to see it from the other side, and it's glorious. I dropped my kid off, I got a kid at practice there and practice there right now. I don't care in the world. I can't do that if I'm a coach. You know, and these guys and gals put in a ton of energy, effort, and love into all of those kids. They're not trying to hurt a kid's feelings, but they have to make decisions for the greater good of the team sometimes. So whatever your policy is, support your dang coaches if you want good ones. If you want crappy coaches, just throw them under the bus and don't support them, and they'll all go off into the wilderness and do whatever they're gonna do. But you're gonna have a terrible team, and it's gonna be miserable. And you're not gonna be competitive, and it's gonna be ugly. So that would be my input from somebody that doesn't even live in Lennox, I guess. Take it for what it's worth.
For the coaches, do you think we could do like some sort of formal reporting process if there is an issue with a parent? Just like report it to Park and Rec manager, maybe there's a generic email that we can send out to the parent like, hey, this is your warning, you're not following the code of ethics, like here's the consequences if you continue. Because I was on the other side of that coin last year, and I wasn't doing anything wrong, but, you know, players don't always get in, especially when your team did not do great last year. You got a big 3 innings. It's really hard to get 14 girls on the field in 3 innings, so.
I agree. I think that we should have something like that in place for the parents as well as, and have it stated in the sign-up sheets, read website have it listed on there, because I don't think you need to print out whatever it's gonna take to print that out, so they can read it over and be responsible, but.
I'll pay for the printing if you want printing. Email's free.
But I just think that for me this year, I had 2 grandmas that almost had to kick out of games this year, because the umpire was gonna walk out the field. Okay? So, I mean, I get it.
And we've done it for other, maybe not for coach complaints, but for things that were said at the games. I think we've done that before, haven't we?
We've tried.
Okay.
Recommendations have been made, but not ultimately taken.
Okay. So then how do we follow through on that if it is something that happens?
We'll have to go through and we'll have to recommend and apply policies. They'll have to then go through to the city council and they'll have to.
But like, if they pass it, which they did, and then.
It would have to go through the park and rec manager. It would have
Right, but if it all goes through everything, how do we actually enforce it at the end? If it's not being enforced now.
So are you talking about like with the coach not playing people or what?
No,
Like the parent.
like if the parent is told they
You
can't
apply to
come,
any
but they still show up.
So what you do
What
is,
do we do?
is everybody knows who everybody is who's doing that, and if you let the coach know that it has to be sent in, say, hey, if you see so-and-so at the field, they're not supposed to be there, okay, please ask them to leave. If not, then they can call the non-emergency number and they could be asked to leave. Non-emergency police.
Is that,
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
that's,
so
it's
that's-
not unusual for me to be called to,
Right.
okay.
usually
so-
the pool, not really, at least not in the last year, baseball or softball games, but to trespass something.
Okay.
If you're not going to league, you're going to league now, or you're
Okay.
going with the police. But that's an in the moment thing, that's not, that's if it's gotten to a point where they need to leave, not necessarily, things that are happening offline or away from the ballgame or at a practice or whatever.
Okay.
So the process for the code of ethics, Violations are supposed to be reported to the city administrator or rec manager. Will inform board and council of complaint. If found to have violated code of ethics, individuals shall be notified by letter and of the allegation and finding, as well as penalty, which is, I noted earlier, the warning, suspension, and dismissal can be appealed to city council within 30 days of the findings.
So do we need to make something completely different, or does that cover it?
No direction that I've heard to me is clear at this point.
Right, it's,
Or is this a, think about it?
oh, we're not gonna be able to figure
Yeah.
anything out tonight, no. There's not gonna be anything we're gonna be able to figure out tonight that's gonna make this all go away. They're just not. Things are gonna have to be discussed, it's gonna have to go over, you're gonna have to, but the things that are brought up are very valid though. And also, taking care of our coaches is very valid, because I've been on the end of trying to find coaches. It's crazy, so.
Do we have anything else for tournament teams for now? Do you guys have anything?
I had a totally separate issue. The reason I came is just on tryouts, as far as my boy is a January 8th birthday. He could play 10U next year. I hope he gets good enough to make the 12U team next year. I'd like for him to be able to try out for the 12U team. And I just was wondering what the policy is. Can he try out for both teams? And if he makes the 12U team, he makes the 12U team. But if he tries out from the 12U team, does that exclude him from playing on the 10U team?
Well, I know in softball, yes, but baseball, I don't know, 'cause you can't be on two rosters in softball.
I think
But
you
if he doesn't.
I think the same was on baseball.
yeah, the same was on baseball. You could only try out for one, right?
Right.
I thought that's
I think
what
so.
we communicated.
I think that was a league rule.
That's, I think, what you
I think it's
guys
in
were
your
told,
policy.
right?
I think it's in your guys' policy.
And you could-
To make one, and you have to pick which one you wanna try out for. I think it's in your guys'
That's
policy.
not, that's not a policy.
That's been told to coaches before though, or to parents that their kids have wanted to do that. It's been communicated.
They fit in
can only
two,
try out
they
for
fit
one.
in two potential age groups.
Like their grade.
Well, they're either moving,
They're
they're
the-
playing up, or they're,
Well, they're the top of
they're playing
what their
like-
birthday is, so they're the top of one age group or the bottom of the, you know.
So like, a fifth grader, usually 12, might be young enough to play 10U.
Yeah.
No, I just wanna play one.
So like, it'd be like,
If they can try
I
out.
think we've got, I think we have a birthday cutoff on the registration.
Yeah, but like if a kid wants to
Play up,
play
play
with
grade.
his grade, but is technically young enough to play lower, he's wondering if we would allow them to try out.
I think we've always let them play up.
Right, he's wondering if you can try out for both.
He wouldn't technically be playing down.
Right.
No, but I mean, but move up.
It's two tryouts.
I just want him to be on the most competitive team
Yeah.
for his level.
Yeah.
And I don't want it, because I know that 12U team next year, I would just slot him right now. He's gonna be 10 through 15. And again, that's just dad talking, but, well, he's gonna be borderline. Well, do I take the chance of him not making that team? And now he can't play 10U either. And again, I've got a follow-up question about rec, but if we're trying to put the most competitive teams out there, I don't know why it would hurt to let him try out. And again, there's other kids in that boat too. Let them try out for both. If you don't make the 12U, and you're good enough to make the 10U, which I'm gonna say you probably will be, great. Now he still gets to play 10U travel, and our 10U travel team is better because we didn't eliminate kids that are eligible to play at that level.
What
I'm
feedback
not
do we,
opposed to that.
what feedback do we get from USF? Do we get 1 through 20 best kids, or is it just these 10 make the team? Like,
Well, I usually say around 11,
mhm.
and 10U, they came back to me and said, 10 through 13, we can't decide. And I didn't say, you need to decide, I said, okay, well, so maybe there needs to be an exact number that we go by, which I'm fine with.
And then they give four, in this case, I think it was four alternates,
So if
right?
you wanna do 10 and coach can pick from these next 4 if needed, or the number's 11, and they can pick from the other ones if needed.
Then you need to have very clear-cut rules of
Right.
expectations of what an alternate can and can't do.
Right. Well, I think if you have an alternate and they get called up, an alternate should be able to play like a regular player.
Well, you guys were saying that though, because our alternate that got moved up made the second team. He was an alternate, and he,
I'm off of what, going forward, what it should be, not off of what it was. I'm saying going forward, the alternate should be able to, like,
it was a coach's
only certain
decision.
people can play shortstop, only certain
Right.
people can catch, only certain people
Right,
can
agreed,
pitch.
agreed.
You know, I get that.
But you guys,
So, right.
yeah, no, I get that, but
I'm-
earlier the discussion was if an alternate came up from the second team and they played over somebody who made the original 10, that was an issue.
Right, off of currently, we have to adjust that. Currently, it is an issue. Going
But
forward.
it's not written anywhere to make it an
No,
issue.
no, it was just, it was never put on paper.
Correct.
And, right, so that's why it has to be put on paper, so everybody
Yes.
knows, yes.
I was just getting at, if, depending on the feedback we get, if he finds out his kid does make the bigger, the 12U team, and that team's announced first, we have this list of alternates, we have the top 14 10U kids, well, we just plug in a different one, let him play with the,
You just
I
might,
put tryouts the same day.
Yeah.
Maybe
I get,
different days.
yeah.
different days.
Different times.
They come into
That's what they do with everyone else. Even
You
with
never
a girl
try
trial, 10 different seasons.
I got a suggestion.
No.
I got a suggestion for tryouts.
Yeah.
Since they usually don't know what positions these kids are playing, I would suggest have the top 9 players for sure make the team, and then the coaches decide the next 2 or 3, however many want on your team. Because then they can see, what if you don't have a catcher on your team? Or you only got 2 pitchers? That's a suggestion. But again, you're gonna have parents that say, oh, this kid made the team because he's.
But
friends with the coach.
I think going forward, when they do tryouts, we need to have a specific, we need to have, when they do the tryouts, we have kids, who can pitch, you get your tryouts, you get your pitchers picked, you get your catchers picked. It should be broken down, it shouldn't just be grouped into a thing. So that way you have the best of each position on your team. Because if you want the best team to win, you're gonna wanna then have the top pitchers, the top shortstops, the top second baseman, top first baseman, go on forward. Instead of just like the top 14 athletes is different, because it's not the same with baseball and softball, it's not. So, if you're gonna do the tryouts, it's gotta be pitching tryouts, then it's gotta be catching tryouts, then it's gotta, and I think that would be the way to get yourself a better all-around team. And then then if we have 4 catchers, they're not all gonna be on one team, that'd make no sense. So the top 2 would be on that team, next 2 would be on the other team.
Can we
In my
provide
opinion.
the USF staff with like a list of what you would like them to fill the team with?
Right, that would be, yeah.
Pitcher, catcher,
Yeah.
I would say they haven't been very far off. In all the years that I've been around, I would say that team isn't very far off from what it should have been. My opinion. Again, my opinion doesn't mean much in that scheme of things, but how they do it currently is not far off on how it should be. I just feel like, again, I think there should be a coach's decision, whether that's the number 11, you take 10 kids, they get to pick one. I would agree with Mr. Rops here as well, that I think 13 is beyond too many. I
That's too
think you
many.
need to mark it at 10 plus 1 per coach's decision, in my opinion. But the USF has not been very far off in the teams that I've been a part of, and that's, again, my opinion.
And I know previously, before you guys allowed kids to move up or not move up, it was always students, USF, Augie, they would be there, along with the 4 or however many rec teams you had, their head coaches. And those head coaches would be allowed at the tryouts, kind of intermingle with the people running the tournament, and then the coaches, along with whoever is running it, would decide whoever the top 11 are.
We had a lot of problems with
Well,
that.
that was when you didn't allow kids to play up, though. Now you allow kids to play up, so maybe coaches need to maybe
But if you have one coach who's a real good talker, can influence above the other coach, you can't have the coaches there. It'd be really easy for somebody who can gab really well and be like, oh, that person's not any good. You could influence people pretty well.
But it was that way for 10+ years before you guys allowed the moving up and whatnot. Then that's when it transitioned to the USF students doing it. So, I mean, we've seen both sides of it, I guess.
Can I add one more wrinkle that you don't have to
Yeah.
talk about anymore tonight? I understand the ease of a park and rec, that because you're running this baseball thing, it's easy to put in, well, every year it's gonna be this way, and it's easy, because, well, this is what the policy states. Like, next year, the 12U team this year became really, really, really good with the addition of some 11-year-olds, okay? Some years, one class is just not as talented. Like, they're just not very good. The year above them, maybe they're really good, right? So like next year, our 11U group has some pitching, will be fairly decent. They'll be fairly decent. And it's like, okay, we didn't make the 12U team, because not this past year before, we had 2 teams. And this is where the rub is, and I completely understand it. The 12U kids that don't make the 12U team now make the second team, but now you gotta play in 12U tournaments where some of these 11-year-olds are mismatched with a 12U pitcher. But if you just have 11U kids, they're gonna face 11U pitching in tournaments where you can be a little more competitive with that second group. If there is a second group, I don't know if that's gonna be the case or not. And again, that ebbs and flows, and I think there's positives and negatives to that, but it's something to think about.
And you're saying to start off with only a 12U group, only an 11U group?
Only in certain situations that might call for that. And I think the coaches and parents are honest enough to say, like, this 11U group is really, really good, but the 12U group is freaking loaded. Like, some of these good 11s probably not make that either, but then you've got some 12Us that aren't as good as some of the 11Us, right? But the 12Us are good enough to make that. Well, then you gotta play in 12U tournaments, and most of our 11-year-olds may be mismatched versus 12U pitching, but there are 11U specific tournaments. Am I saying that correctly?
Forcing you to play up
so if you have
the worst kids of the 12U.
But if you have an 11U going against 12U pitching, then their next 2 years are gonna be better for it.
Yeah, and you can make that argument.
Because if they're at the point where they can do that, if they're not getting better, they shouldn't be at that point. I mean,
Right.
so seeing that isn't a negative, because they're gonna go up, you know?
And I would say, oh, go ahead.
State's 12U, but there's 11U in what, Class A, or whatever that is? Like,
There is.
and they're a really good team. The Open, you could. Now, I don't say so you would, but, I don't know, I mean,
And I think what he's saying is not every year.
Right.
If in my opinion, you take the 11U kids away from this 12U team last year, I would say if Jade had to say something about it, I bet that wouldn't have been very good for that 12U group. Just my opinion. I think, again, it has to be certain situations. We had some very good teams the last couple of years. If you pull those 11U kids out this year off that 12U team, and you play an 11U schedule and let the 12U play the 12U, that 12U would not have been close to success. Now, they've been good, but it just would not quite have been the same.
So if you had the coaches from all the teams get together, and if we came into a year like Brock's talking about, and the coaches, and if they all agreed unanimously, like, this kid, you know, I can totally see that, or even a high majority. If you just have one dissent, and, you know, I can see something like that working, you know, where you push, pull, you know,
Yeah.
where you have consensus from the league.
yeah, and I don't wanna hose the 12U kids that don't make 12U,
Right.
right? But because they now play and we have this mix,
No.
you know, sometimes you're gonna be overmatched with that 12U. I'm throwing it out there just to think
Right.
about, and again, I'm not gonna die on this hill,
Right.
I'm just saying that's something to consider.
Something that was brought up early last spring was doing 11U, because a lot of these guys' sons are 11U, gonna be 12U next year, they have a special group. And there's only maybe 1 or 2 11U kids that will move up to the 12U team. So that's where Brock's getting, we bring down only 1 or 2 12U players, now we're competing at that next level up. Is it the worst decision in the world? No. But if they want to be competitive with
Right.
them, then
Right.
11U would be the best
Right.
option for them.
But if we're talking about being the most competitive team, then I think that includes your top 12 and 11-year-olds on one team.
Correct.
And then your second best 12 and 11-year-olds on the other team. And I've heard a lot about being really competitive, and I think that's where that would go then,
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying, I get that.
Because how the second group of that 12U, how was their year? I don't know.
They got,
We won our very first tournament because it was more like our level. And then we went to 2 or 3 more tournaments after that and got our butts handed to us, plain and simple. We didn't win another game after the first tournament. So, but we played our level talent, I would say, in that very first tournament out in West Central. And then after that, I don't think our kids got better at baseball, personally.
How many 12-year-old kids do you have on our team this year, on the second team? How many 12-year-olds?
I would say 5 to 6.
Yeah.
I'd say we're about split. Because we had, Levi, Lance, Evan, Chase, Flanagan, Maxon, 5, maybe 6, I don't know for sure. But we had 12 kids as well.
So you're saying for this next year, potentially, you could look at doing a 10U, 11U, and a 12U, and everybody would be happy with that, have enough?
No, I don't think everybody's going to have with anything. to make
No.
decisions.
If you're playing 11U, you can't play 10U.
No, that's what I'm saying, because we've got 5, my son's one of them, we got 5 of them that could play 10U. And that 10U team could be pretty salty, right? But then I think the rec at 10U for these 5 kids is gonna be a waste of time,
Yeah.
to be honest. So that's where we're talking, well, can we play 12U rec, right, and play 10U tournament, which again is another conversation, and
So could these kids play 11U tournaments and 12U tournaments?
they could.
Yeah, so you could have an 11U team that play a couple tournaments, so they would be able to play with their peers. Plus, then they would be able to play then with the 12U team and get their experience.
Just something.
teams.
Huh?
The pitching would ruin that. I think the second team of the 12U honestly got hurt because of what was being pitched and beyond. So I think pitching is an issue by doing that many teams or playing on multiple teams.
And I'm not saying it, I'm just saying if there was a weekend, I don't know if you played every weekend. So if there was an 11U tournament weekend that you weren't playing, then you could have the 11Us play.
Is that
But
something that the park
during the league, you have rec league during the week where these kids will be pitching as well.
So, and that's just also, you
Yeah.
would have to figure that out.
I would think of the coaches and everybody's kind of majority's on board with an 11U and a 12U 1 year. If you have the numbers, then maybe you look at it.
So if we did do a 12 and an 11, would you allow the 11-year-olds to try out for the 12?
I would say, yeah, your 11-year-olds that try out for the 12, if they make the team, great, that's your most competitive team.
And then the next team is only 11-year-olds, do you have, I'm just gonna be honest, do you have enough 11-year-olds to make a solid team?
Yes.
If you
I
take-
think we're gonna
if you
have
take-
enough 11-year-olds next year
They don't make
to have a
They
competitive.
don't make the top 12 team.
Yeah, if you start taking the pitchers from 11U that'd be the best kids and put them on 12U, now the 11U is not as good.
And then there's
So then-
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because
It's probably
I guess from my aspect, I would rather do one 12U team and one 11U team as opposed to a 12U and a second 12U. A
Yeah.
12U B team
So if you're 12 and you don't
makes
make
it
the
more, makes it more
12 team,
difficult.
the rest of the next team is 11U.
Yeah.
But you can't, if you're 12 and that didn't make it, you're just done.
Right.
So then we're back to the same
And
situation.
then you
with
have
coaches.
parents whose kids that may have had a bad tryout,
Right.
you don't make a
I
tournament.
don't think Parks and Rec is gonna be able to solve this problem. I'll just say, no offense. It's just, it comes on the parents.
It's, again,
There are
There's a
all
lot of
the
scenarios,
ideas.
and
I like all the ideas,
It's just,
Part of
the B team just has to sign up for tournaments that are at their level, you know? They're not gonna be competitive at the most competitive team. Even call towns around here that have set up one game with them, you know, that's all they have to do, instead of getting in tournaments. You know?
Can I motion to move us to the next item, please? I'm not, and that's nothing, this is great discussion, great input from people. I wrote down a lot of really good feedback and everything, but we're not gonna set up teams for
Nothing
next
will
year.
get
So we've
We're not
got,
gonna set up the tryouts for next year here tonight. We're not gonna, write the new rules tonight or anything.
And I've got another meeting in 25 minutes.
so we've got a motion to table, right? Would that be what it's
Sounds
called?
Table the.
I second
That was just a
Or you don't even have
But
to.
it was just a discussion, we don't have to move.
We don't have, your motion goes unheard.
Yeah.
Okay,
Shut up.
Forget your motion.
thanks, guys. Okay, so moving on to the Parks Master Plan.
Board members, we continue to have some discussions on improved opportunities for our facilities, for our recreation programs. Continued discussions of capital improvement plan sessions yield a number of ideas and desires for Lennox Parks. Discussions with the mayor and engineer learned that there's still interest in discussion about a master parks plan. That would obviously help the park board and the city council plan for future facilities improvements, help us with any land acquisition needs, if any, and help with the timeline for making some of those improvements. And I do want to make sure I mention, since I talked about identifying land acquisition needs, we are prepared to close on the purchase of 2 properties right across from El Mariachi. There's 2 empty lots there. And we're discussing further the purchase of 609 South Main Street. So tonight I would just welcome discussion of whether or not there's interest in moving forward with the master park plan. I did include the scope of services that Stockwell prepared last year, 2 years ago for this.
How are we on the acquisition of the creek edge?
The survey's done, we don't have a layout of it yet, though.
Did we
Did
get
you like that?
an estimate on the cost of the re-engineering?
I think I asked for one, I didn't get one before this meeting, though.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to make it to the capital improvement plan meeting.
Christy and I went.
What were some things,
Yeah, thank you.
what were some things that were brought up parks wise?
Dog park,
Okay,
talked about baseball, softball complex.
Yep.
Addition of that.
Soccer fields.
Soccer fields. Trail, finishing the trail.
I've got it here.
I didn't take
I've
notes.
I've got the
on that
map
meeting,
scanned,
sorry.
so I can,
It's pretty good, off the cuff.
I was like, I'm gonna go to a meeting, I want to take notes at.
and it's not gonna come up, come on. Mitch has my original up in Sioux Falls yet, so, but he did scan it, and it's not.
cause then I.
Dog park, trail,
Fishing area, that like. pond
potential
off
ball
of-
field.
Yeah, that pond off of Highway 17 by Terry's.
Yeah, that was more of a drainage acquisition, but we
Okay.
talked about using that for creating a larger kind of nature area.
Yep.
What else am I missing, Kirsty?
Some like bathroom replacements
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
installation at
Yeah.
the parks.
Bathroom at West Evergreen, some sort of facility at the T-ball field,
Yes.
Yeah.
um,
We talked about,
sidewalks to the park.
at that T-ball field, the building behind it with the antenna and stuff, I don't know if that was in this.
So we worked with, I'll say Bass, but something else, Blue Peak. We worked with Blue Peak for about 7 months to acquire that, and right before I was supposed to get the copy of the agreement, they pulled it off and said, we have too much stuff there that we want to keep in place.
Okay.
It would have been great to have
Yeah.
a spot for another T-ball.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I mean, I think it would be great if we got a new master plan, so we had a vision, we could share it with the public, we could get feedback.
I think
With
there's so
this
many things
new-
that came up in that
Yes.
CIP session and the park sessions beforehand, that to make any of them happen, I mean, we can do one project, but it could screw up 5 different projects down the road.
Yeah.
Right.
And we don't wanna get into a situation where we can't do something because we already decided something else.
Yeah, to prioritize what we're doing. And it's nice too, cause you know, at the capital planning, you're talking sewer and streets and drainage and all this, all the sidewalks and that kind of stuff. So it'd be nice to have a, more focused plan for us.
So do we need a motion to move forward with that?
If you're interested in moving forward, we'll get the exhibit updated, get a cost estimate. Mayor, anything you wanted to add to this?
Not really. Some of it, I agree with what Sailor was saying too, just a cost estimate from Stockwell to help drive that vision. I think creating renderings would be really helpful to help cast the vision to the community too, and you know, park board, city council as well. But we have especially if we acquire a little bit more land too, so what are we gonna do with it? It's just gonna be parking lot, we're gonna, you know, continue the path further, you know, like along the creek side and stuff like that too, but yeah, I think it's good to keep on investigating a little bit more to, just to be able to, we were already talked about, you know, improving the park already with the playground equipment too, so, but yeah, you hit most of it.
Would this be something that Stockwell and us work together, or they put it together and then?
No, it would be a very consultative process.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think you get the exhibit, the cost estimate set. My guess is we'll wanna change some things in the exhibit and proposal. Just here's what we really wanna see with regard to, you know, ballpark space study. What do we need for facilities there? Soccer, so on and so forth. You know, what are the things that you wanna get out of this? And then, you can run it any number of ways. I'm really interested to see it run sort of like Del Rapids did theirs in the past year. They obviously had the park board involved, council involved, but they also had multiple listening sessions. They had online opportunities to point stuff out on a map, and it's just recorded in that system, so we get that feedback through surveys, so on and so forth. So it'll be a pretty comprehensive process.
And we actually saw Del Rapids at one time, didn't
You
they
saw their
bring it here?
proposal.
Or,
Their
yeah,
proposal, yeah. They should be wrapping it up fairly soon. I actually visited with a few of them yesterday. I don't think it's completely finished yet, but it should be this year.
okay.
So then they take our capital improvement plan and they look at the type of land or land that we would need to acquire and make recommendations on, you know, like we need this much square footage for this many fields, you need to do this sort of drainage in that area, like all those kind of things.
Yeah, I don't know that we necessarily get into drainage, because you can always make water flow downhill. But there's, you know, there's certain challenges on the current location that would make drainage difficult, for example. I think that would all be a part of it. We'd also want to take a look at what, you know, we'd have cost estimates, and that's what we would really need to have out there for that capital improvement plan. And I would just make sure I mention, none of this is budgeted in that budget for next year, which we also had to cut back a little bit, so just know that I think we all fully support going forward with this. I just don't know how to pay for it quite yet, so.
Lennox Art Club, can you dress up a new one?
Art club, yeah, why not? They painted my plow, why not throw up some renderings for a park plan? So it sounds like there's some interest there. We'll get
Yeah, I
it,
think
get it
we need to.
updated, get a cost estimate, and we can go from
So, we're
gonna move
we
forward.
want a motion to do it though, or do we not need it?
there. Yeah, not necessarily.
No, yeah.
I think it's just general interest.
Okay. All right, batting cage.
David, do you wanna take this?
Sure. Actually Matt got it, because he put together the proposal.
I didn't bring the fancy stuff with though, so
We got it.
if you guys wanna ask questions, that'd be the best. No, I'm
And I
kidding.
just submitted this since I didn't have it.
Oh, okay. So we don't have a formal, in that, but I'll run through that, we get the numbers. Okay, So LBSA is trying to pull out new batting cages. Obviously, we know we only have one. When I talked to Trey about how many teams that we have, currently we have 18 teams that between softball, baseball, amateur, legion, all that stuff, that are using one cage and 3 fields. So trying to get more opportunities for the kids to practice, right? So the cage that we're looking at doing, it's this Mastodon batting cage, and on the first page there, you can see that there's a T-pole right in the middle. That allows us to expand. So in the future, we can actually add on to the cage. So if we can only purchase one this year, we can add on to it in the future. And you can tie all the way up to 6 poles in it, so, or up to 6 cages in it is what they structurally recommend. So the first system would include the T-poles, and then hopefully in the next 1 to 2 years, we'll be able to expand upon it. On the next page, there's a very awesome image off of Google Maps. Last year, we moved the Little League fence in to 200 feet to create space for these possible cages. So as you can see, there's from 200 to 265 feet. There's 65 feet of space that we can use out there. So we could get at least 3 feet or 3 cages in that space if possible.
Are you thinking put it right behind the scoreboard for the big field, that area, or?
Yeah, so they would essentially, where the old fence is, it's still up on that high plane.
Yeah.
We would
It's already level.
Yeah, it's already level, so we would run it northeast to, or what I got, northeast by, should be southwest, I'm sorry. And then work our way back towards home plate on the Little League field there. So the cage dimensions right now that we're looking at, they're 14 feet wide and 55 feet long. So basic math tells us that we should be able to get at least 3 cages in that space. What we've got for cost right now is about $8,300. Kobe and I were talking earlier, there's another possible company where we could get it cheaper, that would get rid of the shipping costs. Then we would be able to also then pour the concrete. What is it, 7 and 12?
Yeah, 7 for a single cage pad, and 12 for basically a double for the future if you want to pay for both.
Yep, so pour concrete in there. Mr. Jabers is willing to do it at a reduced price. If we only pour 1 pad, basically we would pour it so that the left side of it would be thicker, and then he could tie into it with rebar, and then we could extend out from there, whether we do 1 or 2 additional cages from that. So the 1 pad would be 7, and if we would pour enough for 2 cages, it would be up to $12,000 as well. So as we were talking about the proposal at our LBSA board meeting, number 1, can we use that property that's available? And number 2, is there any requests that we can do for the city to possibly donate some funds to it as well as we're looking to move forward with it?
So this would sit behind the fence, we're right next to the old, would the old cage be removed?
Yeah.
Turn about 90 degrees.
So if you look at the drawing here, right, where I have the distance between the 200 and the 265 feet, that 65 feet of space is what we would be looking at utilizing right there. So it would sit just on the other side of the cage in that open space to where the Little League fence ends and going towards.
So it would go kind of parallel with the Little League fence.
Yep.
From
Left field?
So it would sit out there right in center field.
center field to right field.
Yep, so, and then hopefully in the future, in that left field and right field space, that we can put in, like bullpens and stuff, so we can do infield practice, but yet we can get 2 kids that go out and throw 30 pitches. We can have we can do 48 feet, we can do 60 feet, so we can accommodate the Legion and the older kids, whatnot, as it's going forward.
And I think one thing that we have electricity that's very close.
So there's electricity that's,
That pole.
I mean, you can run, what is it, like a 55-foot cord right now, you can get to the old cage?
100 actually.
100, so, I mean, we would cut down that space dramatically as we're running the cage back towards south there.
Yeah,
Is that coming from this light or way over here?
The scoreboard.
Right around the scoreboard.
Yeah, so
There's a box right there by the scoreboard.
Yeah, so if you look at it, the scoreboard's right here, here's the old cage, there's electricity right around in this area, there's a small box. So it would be available for all cages if we would want to throw a pitching machine in there. this your Netflix?
I was gonna say, do we ever get to watch TV?
What do you do all day, Nate?
You know. There you go. If you wanna show it out a little bit better. If you wanna walk up there.
A little bit left on me. So yeah, so kind of pretty much right where he was at, there's the, you got a laser pointer, got all this stuff with a laser pointer?
No lasers.
So cage,
Ask for sharks with lasers on their heads.
cage sits here, there's electricity in this area, we would put the cages running in this direction, from the right to the left. So like I said, with that concrete, the left side of it would be thicker, therefore we could tie into it, we put another pad as we add cages towards that 200-foot little leaf fence, if that makes sense.
So in terms of, cost sharing, I think this is where your discretionary wealth comes into play.
What is it for one cage versus two?
For 2 cages, the quote I got from the original company, for 2 cages, shipping, installation, and concrete, they want $50,000. So for 1 cage, we can purchase it for what we think to be even less, right around 13 with.
That was with 2 cages.
We're 2 cages, so
Free shipping.
13, free shipping, and then we have $12,000 for concrete. And then we would still have a T-pole on the end, we would have that thicker edge on the left side, so then we can add another cage onto it as well moving forward.
What are we figuring for install on the cages?
That's what we don't have a quote on as of right now, so either it's, city, or hopefully we can find a contractor that would either do it at a reduced cost or possibly donate their time.
Yeah.
So at one time, I had heard that Shields had a grant, right, that you guys were kind of, oh, you were, okay.
So right now, we're trying to.
Because I thought that was maybe, was gonna go to this at one
It
time?
actually was, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, there was a lot of fingers crossing and, instead we had tears instead of it.
okay, I hadn't heard that, so that's why I was wondering.
Time to go to Dick's. Right now, what we're trying to do, not a bad idea, right now, we're selling the scoreboard. So right now, what we're asking is $6,000 for 5 years. So I think we have 2 commits for it right now, so we have 6 additional spaces to sell, so, that money will be tied to the batting cages and then, hopefully eventually turfing the bit larger field and whatnot, but, we still have some legwork to do on that.
When do you think we need to make a decision by?
So we would like to do one of the cages is this year. Really what we want is to show the community, hey, we are, not just the fence, but we're putting in batting cages, we're actively involved. So that as we're out doing, events, donations, drives, whatever, that we can hopefully drum up some more, just because, more funds, because they see what we're doing and the productivity with it. So if we can do it this year, great. If not, and we would have to do it right away in the spring, as early as possible, and then publicize it as much as possible, and get it out there to the community, whether we have a ribbon cutting for it or whatever, just so that there's publicity that's tied to it, so everybody knows that we're still doing good things for the community.
Do you think that LBSA could get us a specific dollar amount request?
Itemize all the good stuff.
Yep.
Just what exactly, what amount you need?
Right, what you need from us,
Yeah.
what,
Part of the
Because then we
reason,
can put that in and take a look at what, by this point in the year, we're getting a pretty good idea of where we're gonna end the year.
part of the reason that they were pushing for this year is because concrete guys in the spring tend to get very busy.
Right.
We gotta wait, and we don't want them to have to rip frost, and by that point, there's already practices going on. So do we really want them out there digging up stuff when there's kids out there already? So we're like, season's over, maybe we can get in there this fall and get the crew forward, and the cage can go later on. That was the thought process.
I was just curious, if like to do 2 at once is significantly cheaper, like 1.5 the price versus doing 1 and then 1 later, costs go up in a couple of years or whatever.
Yeah, and
or is
so
it just too much to do?
that's kind of why we wanted to do the T-pole on the end. So really, we will have to purchase another cage plus 1 net to get to 3 cages. Because we'll already have 2 ends, right? So then we'll set another cage. We'll have a middle cage then because of the 2 T-poles, and then there's a 3rd cage that goes into it, and the extra cost then is just the net, the cabling, and some basic stuff there.
So the concrete would be all done for both?
If
No
if they
matter
did
what,
4-2 or
is
they
what-
would be prepped for
So
the
it's
second.
ready for the next.
Yeah,
one.
so we wouldn't do it for both, but we would prep it, so that's where I said there's that thicker edge on the left side.
Oh, yeah.
So he's gonna run rebar into it to tie the two pads then together.
Yeah, if you get us a cost, I think at least getting the concrete down this year is awesome. It should
So
be.
right now, the cost is $7,000 or $12,000 from Scott Chambers. 12,000 for, the ability to do two, or
Yeah.
7,000 for the ability to do one.
So is 12 your dollar request, or do you?
12 would be the goal.
Yep, okay.
I will do some homework and see if we can make some magic happen.
Okay,
But I like your request.
thank you.
You bet.
We like you too. I mean,
Well.
It's fine, it ebbs and flows.
Let's not get carried away.
Sometimes you like, sometimes you do.
Okay, last, recreation manager.
Board members, I don't have much time here, we've got a Q&A yet tonight, so. But as you know, Trey here has resigned his position effective October 7th. I think, with this position, with that resignation, we'll obviously need to fill a position again this fall or winter. But given the growing programs and responsibilities for the entire team, I think we need to have a larger conversation about staffing and appropriate responsibilities within that whole department. So I'd like to suggest that we get a subcommittee together, with a few park board members, a few council members, key staff, and start discussing, all positions and, what that would look like.
And the second thing is being that it's getting bigger, should it be full-time like it was that we pulled away? I mean,
That's
because
exactly what the
we
issue
were
is.
asking so much of Trey with part-time, like it's full-time work.
We looked at numbers before the meeting tonight, and from 2022, our programs have almost doubled
Right.
the number of people.
Right.
Not in baseball and softball, that's actually gone down.
Right.
I'll just make sure that stays out there. But, you've got increase in soccer, pickleball's new, volleyball's new, summer rec, flag football, I mean, it's all.
And it's only gonna get
money.
bigger, because we get people moving in all the time.
So if there's a subcommittee that does not constitute a full quorum, that would be ideal, but.
I will volunteer to be on a subcommittee.
And I did say I would maybe be willing to stay on with help.
Yeah.
But alone, one
It's too
man
much.
show is too much.
It's too much.
But if someone headed softball and baseball, and I headed all the new ones,
Yep.
I mean,
No, I get it.
so I'm willing, I'm open to staying on as co or
Right.
whatever, if that's what.
Well, and then that.
everyone
I think
would like.
there's
But
so
that,
many
but
different.
that would help too
possibilities.
as an option, because then you wouldn't have to, you could get somebody else then they wouldn't have to get full-time.
It'd be another part-time.
Right.
But during the spring, it's baseball, softball starting, fall soccer, and spring pickleball all at once.
Volleyball,
It's a lot.
it is a lot.
So I enjoy it, I just, alone, it is too much for me and my family, so. But I would like to, I'd be open to staying on, with help.
Plus you got a golf more now.
Coach golf and golf.
Well, but now you got a golf more since you coach it, now you got a golf more, it's
Yeah.
just.
Exactly.
Okay, so I've got Clinton Saylor on there. Anybody else badly want to be on?
I'd do it if no one else wanted to, but if someone else is good, I would, it'd be fine.
When are we, was this like?
No idea.
Okay.
How many do you need?
We can't
I
have
would
more
take
than
no more
three,
than
right?
Okay.
But I don't, I'm good.
That's totally fine, I'm good.
I keep signing up for all these things. A little bit worried what's gonna happen here in a few months.
I can help you coach volleyball occasionally.
My sister is like heading that and I'm like co-coaching with her. That's the
Yeah.
only way I got talked into that.
I got told I'm coaching volleyball this year. Yeah. The one thing I never thought I was gonna coach.
Okay, so we don't have to actually do a motion for that, we're good. All right, so.
And I'm just proposing this to city council. I have not, I'll be proposing it to them at some point soon.
Okay.
No, I would imagine we can go that route.
All right, I motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright,
I need to go home and get my YouTube up.
Thanks.
Got 4 minutes.
Harass them on
It
that
takes
a
me
little
3
bit.
to log in. My first meeting, is this typical meeting?
It's like this every time.
My second, so I'm here right there.
It's your fault.
What did you give me into?
Yeah.